Hey kids, welcome back to another episode of Smith Motorworks. Messing with the old tow motor again today. Part 2, we'll get an update on what's been happening, work on a few things. Check it out. Let's dare to be different. Okay, here we go. Now, if you go back to episode 1, I think I showed you the controls and the floorboards that are in this. Cool thing about this fork truck is it kind of all comes apart. There's a main unit body, really, that everything bolts to, but like all the panels, everything unscrews, and you can get to stuff to service it. So I'm kind of panel painting this thing here. I'm not Larry Watson panel painting, but I mean piece painting it just to get it back to being yellow. And I pulled the floorboards up. There's one big piece that goes all around the pedals, and there's two little side pieces that are their tread plate. You can see the holes for it here, two bolt holes there, like a left and a right that go around the transmission here. But I wanted to show you this because we were talking about brakes in the first episode, and the fact that this doesn't have a parking brake. It's got service brake and then a handle that operates the service brake. And if you can see, we're moving the brake pedal when we're moving the lever back and forth here. This hand lever looks like a steam locomotive or something. But what I wasn't expecting to see is how the brakes work. I was being ignorant about fork trucks. I was thinking that there were brakes on the wheels, but there's not. There's a brake on the differential here, and if you can see that band going around there, that's like 1920s automotive technology there. It's a contracting external brake, I believe they call that, instead of like a drum brake where you've got shoes pushing out into the drum. This is kind of clamping down on it. Let's see if you can see it move here. It is pretty busy with linkages and bell cranks and stuff in here, but it's basically, maybe get a little bit further back. You might be able to see that. Yeah, see that bolt right there? There's a lever, this one going right back and forth here, that's pulling this band that's wrapped around that drum, pulling it together, like clamping it down. And that's what stops it. And it's, like I said before, it doesn't stop super great, but it doesn't really go super fast either. And I suppose I could adjust it, but until I find out exactly the right procedure, I'm not going to go cranking bolts on this thing. I mean, it's kind of a sleeping dog's lie scenario for me here. The other good thing out of pulling this off, I don't know if you can see this line going right through here, this hydraulic line. It's laying right on some moving parts, and I can see that it's wet, so it's starting to wear through that line. So it's a good thing I pulled these out, because that would have eventually cut through. And maybe that's where one of the leaks are coming from. I mean, this thing leaks a little bit, but I'm not too concerned about it. It's not pouring oil everywhere, and it's old. So, old mechanic friend told me he didn't mind cars if they leaked a little bit, because at least you knew where it was going. And there's some logic in that. Wanted to show you one last look here. Let's walk around the other side, because I want you to see that brake. Yeah, that's a heck of a differential on this thing too. You see, just a tiny little shaft connection, transmission to differential there, and all the linkages. Cool stuff. One of the other things we talked about was this instrument panel that it has here. Of course, it was missing all the gauges when I got it, and I just stuck one in there. And I'm gonna put them all in there. I really want to know oil pressure and engine temperature, water temperature, and the charging system. Well, if you recall, it doesn't really have one, but we'll get one. But that's not. I can do without that one for a while. But the way this was supposed to work was the starter button that's right here. That's in the right spot. This was supposed to be a choke cable, which now it's an on-off switch for the ignition. But this was supposed to be choke cable. That's kind of why it's on an angle. And then up here was a key switch to turn it off and on. Did the same thing that this does. There's no choke cable on it now, which is a total pain in the neck. And I may go in, order me one today, because I was starting this earlier, and it's no fun out here in the wintertime trying to get it started with no choke, or at least hopping off of it and moving it by hand. But what I want to do is kind of put it back to the stock arrangement and put the master switch up here. But there's nothing wrong with this. It works fine, and I could just move it up there, save for the fact that the holes are different sizes. But we'll talk about that in a minute. But I wanted a visual indicator as to, is it on or off? Because, hey, you can walk away from that and leave it on. This is points type ignition. Bad things can happen when you do that. So I wanted a lighted switch to show me, if I turn my back and walked out the door, I could look over here and go, oh man, I got to turn that off. So I started looking around for a switch, and I did find one. And, well, actually, I thought about just putting a light in here, but then I was like, I just don't want to drill any more holes in this. I mean, it's had enough, customization gun with holes and booger welds and whatnot, and I don't want to do any more. So I could put a key switch in here, but, I'm bound to lose that, and it's really not necessary here. If somebody in a warehouse, yeah, it made sense. You don't want somebody hopping on it and taking a joyride, but here, I mean, where are they going to go? If they take off in my neighborhood, I think I'll find them. But what I got, let me show you. I got this little lighted toggle switch. It's got your option of 3 different color LEDs, and it has a lighted ring around there, and then there's a little on-off marking on it. I wanted something that didn't look so modern. It would be obvious this wasn't from the era. And yeah, they didn't have LEDs, so what? I'll cave to that just to have that light come on when it's on, because I really think that's important. I don't like leaving any of my old stuff setting energized, because unless you're out there all the time, you don't know, is something shorting out. You burn the place down and lose everything. So I want to be able to disconnect everything. If I don't have a battery disconnect, which I'll probably put a battery disconnect on this too, just to make it safe. I mean, maybe it's being too cautious, but hey, it's cheap insurance to me. But yeah, this is just an imported little switch. I mean, there's nothing really trick about it. And I thought, oh, this will fit the bill, and I went to put it in here, and I knew this already, but this is for a 16 millimeter hole in a panel, and this hole is more millimeters than 16. How many? Who cares? But what do? I got to put this in here. Wanted to come up with something that didn't look totally rigged, and started playing around, and what I found is, wow, this hole is exactly the right size for one of these. 1/2-inch knockout seal, or knockout plug, or a push penny, or whatever your favorite electrician wants to call it. But when there's an unused hole in a panel or a box, you can't just leave it open. So you want to plug it with one of these. Well, okay, plug that hole. Now what? Well, we'll plug that hole with this, and we'll drill a 16 millimeter hole, or pretty close, right through the middle of that. And this will make a nice little trim bezel for our switch. And no one will be the wiser except all you people that watch this video. But we'll get that going and put that in there. I'm gonna take this thing apart probably 10 times because, you know, I'm putting gauges in it, I'm putting choke cable in it. That's okay. I don't mind. It's really easy. It's got just a couple bolts that hold it on, and one of them's actually missing, so the whole thing pulls out because I want to paint it up. Like I said, everything comes apart on this, which is pretty neat. So I can take this out, paint it. I can take these side panels off and paint those. You know, gonna have to do some big metal work, as we saw in the first episode. It's definitely been, yeah, you know, textured. But we'll get that straight or straighter and put it back together, and she'll all be yellow again one day and have a lighted switch. Also wanted to show you this. These are the panels, and I got them kind of in a weird arrangement here. This one is kind of the way it should be. This is the main floor panel, and then those go on the left and the right. You know, I'm just slinging some paint on these. I'm not trying to super slick this up, but now I really wish that I had, because what I discovered, let me show you here in a minute. I'm a big fan of Rust-Oleum. You know, people say WD-40 and duct tape, but I think 3-in-1 oil and Rust-Oleum should be included in that too, because this stuff's great for painting equipment. This is not Rust-Oleum though. This is from my local Ace Hardware in my little town. You can barely read it. It says Ace Rust Stop because I slop paint all over the side of it. I'm a sloppy painter, at least when it comes to that. But they didn't have the safety colors. They did have Rust-Oleum, but they didn't have safety colors. So I wanted safety yellow, and I got this stuff. I thought, oh, heck, I'll try it. It might be Rust-Oleum anyway, with just their house label on it. Well, I don't think it is, because you can thin Rust-Oleum, and this specifically says do not thin it. So I was like, well, what am I getting into here? It was cheap. I'll try it. Well, it's awesome. This stuff flows out like no other. I mean, it encapsulated those parts. I don't know if you can tell on this here. I mean, that's like, I mean, just totally coated. And I've been beating and banging around on this, and it's really not chipped. And like I said, I goofed up part of this, but you can see parts of this. I mean, I didn't finish this or anything. I mean, I just slapped it on there. Like I painted with a roller that had some paint already on it, so I messed it up. But man, before I goofed that up, I mean, it looked like I sprayed it. I don't know if you can tell that or not, but if I had taken a little bit more time, this would have came out great. And it's got so much paint on it, I could color sand this, and it would come out. I mean, I was just like, wow. I was like, I wish I hadn't gotten in a hurry. But the other thing is, your boots are going to be banging on this, and it's just a floor pan, so maybe that's a little overkill. We'll see how the rest of the stuff comes out, and we may go back and touch some stuff up. But this paint right here, and again, this ain't no endorsement or anything. I'm just showing you guys what works for me and what I've had good success with. And I love Rust-Oleum, but this stuff, you don't have to thin it or anything. It's pretty thin, and the application, or the tools for application I use is these whiz rollers. Yeah, no jokes there, right? But they're not the cheapest, and it was kind of hard to find the Whiz brand, which I liked because it worked. Little roller frame here, just stabs on there, and they come on and off easy on like a bigger roller frame that ends up getting glued on there. But I bought some backups here from Amazon. Yeah, who has ever heard of that? I don't know, but it's the same kind. It's the the foam roller. Just the smooth surface, and I painted that stuff, and I was smiling when I was doing it. So if you got something like that, a piece of equipment or something, just roll in one direction. Don't reuse the roller, and it will come out. I'm telling you, man. I love to paint, but I am not very good at it. But I get some decent results, and this stuff, if you take your time, I think it can make you look like you know more about what you're doing than you actually do. Okay, let's modify that plug we got. Now I could eyeball and drill a hole sort of in the middle here and just be done with it, but I always say what's worth doing is worth doing right, or at least to the best of your abilities or interest in this case. We could get super trick and put this on the lathe and hit it almost dead center, but we can get super, super close to where it won't be visually off by using a couple hand tools that we got here. I just went through my socket drawer and found a socket that would fit down in here. Okay, this happens to be a old Duralast 9/16, and it's, it'll move a tiny bit, but it's not something you'd be able to see that it was not concentric. Why did I do that? Well, because I went and got my transfer punches, because I knew I could find one that fit through the socket and use the socket as a guide. So, and it was just random. I don't even know what size this is. I don't care. I just want to hit the center, and I'm going to put the socket in here, not like this, because if I put it like this, the part that's holding it is up higher, so you can see, I can move it a little further away from the target. If I flip it down on the bottom, to where the thick part of the socket is up against my plug, it can't move around as much. Okay, it can still move, but we're gonna hold it pretty straight. And I'm also putting something soft down on the bottom here, because I'm not gonna hit this like I'm trying to kill Count Dracula or something, but I want to hit it hard enough that it would scratch it up if I smacked it on some other metal that wouldn't give. Or so if you had some softer metal or wood or something, because why scratch the face of this up? I mean, you could even, if you're super concerned about it, you could put tape on it, but these aren't really super polished from the factory, and they're steel too, so you could paint them if you wanted to. So we'll set that up and give it a hit, and that's close enough to where I can see where the middle of it is. Now, step 2, I've got this started. What do? Go put this in the vise and drill it? Well, maybe, but what'll probably happen is it'll catch, and this will spin, and it'll flip out, and it'll rip it all to pieces. So I went back to the socket drawer, and I found a socket, which in this case is a 22 millimeter cobalt. And I'm not telling you pick this size, pick that size. Just find one that works. If you got a socket set, just jump around. And these have 6 tabs on them, so I was looking for a 6-point, but this 12-point, I mean, you can hear this. It pops in, it snaps into that. So man, that's going to hold it. So I can get a hold of this, and I can get the drill started. You probably won't be able to see that in there. Maybe you can. You can see the dimple that the transfer punch made. But I can get the drill started in there and draw our pilot hole, and then we'll just flip it over and drill it from this side so we can actually see what we're doing. But that's pretty close to the middle. I mean, I'm not gonna fuss about that. If I took my time, I could probably hit the center of that. And if you got something like a optical center punch or something, some other trick tool, you could do it another way. But this is stuff that you could use a screwdriver. And don't beat up a good screwdriver, but you could probably find a screwdriver that fit through here and fit right. So you can do this stuff if you think about it and get the job done, and it looks like you spent a heck of a bunch of time on it. Okay, I went ahead and drilled a 1/8 inch pilot hole in that. I just flipped it over and drilled right into my cardboard here. You can see the little dimple that I made. You guys don't need to see that. You know how to drill a hole. But the next step is we want to make sure that our switch, which is supposed to be 16 millimeter, will fit in to this, and we drill the right size hole. I'm not going to do the math and figure this out. I'm just going to measure this and measure that and stop at the right step. This is a Milwaukee step drill bit, and man, they are, I mean, that was something I had to save up to get, because they ain't cheap. You can use, you know, the tool store brand ones. The only big difference that I see is that the pilot on these is just sharp on the Milwaukee stuff, and the generic is not. So you really are relying on the pilot hole, whereas this, you know, this is just burned through whatever. If I had a good center punched mark, I could have just like tore into this, but and it's got more steps too. So anyway, we got the pilot hole started, so we know we can start cutting a hole here. But what do we got? If you measure this, I'm going to zero it out again. These are getting old. And showing like 0.6 or something. Cool thing about the digital ones is you can switch back and forth. It's saying 15.18 millimeters, which, you know, is enough tolerance if it was a 16 millimeter hole, but I really don't even care about the numbers. What I care is that I stopped the right step here. So there's a couple ways of doing this. You know, I can set this, I don't even care what the number is, kind of hit the thumb screw on the top of this caliper and slide it out, and then put it onto my step drill and see, all right, well, that's where it's going to need to stop on the step drill. Or I can just kind of go and check with the other ends here and see, am I big enough of a hole yet? Whatever way you do it, it's just like cutting lumber, you know. You can't, you know, measure twice, cut once kind of thing. The board stretcher would be great if they really existed, but they don't. So you spend all this time doing this, and then you drill the hole too big, and you know, you got to start over. So take your time. Now, I'm going to try to hang on to this when I'm drilling it, but I really don't recommend it. The only reason I'm doing this is because it doesn't have a sharp edge on it. If it did, rip it out of your hand and cut you. So, I mean, get some gloves or something. And I may give up here. See, I already pulled that out, so should be using my advice. Getting close. See, we're going to get up into that shoulder there. So let me move this over to the vise. Okay, I moved it over to the vise here because it was kind of jumping out of my hand. And I also taped it down. That's not going to help or hurt us from cutting it. I just didn't want it to pop out of the socket because it was putting a lot of force on it there. But let's step it up a little bit higher here. You can see. Yeah, we're still a ways away. I had to switch to a deep well socket here. Almost got it, but the normal link socket was just a little bit, we ran out of room. It was just a little bit too shallow to get this all the way into where I needed to go. So moved to this, and we got plenty of room now. So let's get her done. Hope that battery holds out. So close. if we're spinning or not. All right, check that out. Got a nice little bezel there. Looks like it's supposed to be that way. Pop that into the panel, wire it up. Didn't have to alter the original piece at all. This was pushing into the ragged edge. I will tell you, in all honesty, this is my second attempt. What you saw me working on earlier, yeah, it came loose, and there you go. So that's okay. You learn from your mistakes, right? So I slowed way down and got it up close and just filed it out. You know, got a really good fit on that. I mean, it fits. It just worked out. The step in that plug is almost the exact same size as the outer diameter of the face of the switch. So it just sits right in there. You know, this didn't show quality or anything, but like I said, it's paintable. So if you needed to fill a hole or put a light in or put a switch in, or you wanted to make this like a decorative button, I mean, these things are cheap, man. I mean, they're like, I don't know, 50 cents or something. I mean, and you buy a bunch of them and the price goes way, way down. So, you know, you could put your car logo or something on there, or a indicator light, or just fill a hole, because, you know, that's a big thing, you know, plugging up holes in a car. I mean, you get a fire or something like that, it's going to be a blowtorch coming in from the engine into the engine compartment. So these things work. I mean, if you don't want to weld it up and you want to take it out, I mean, they're pretty good. You know, you can seal it up, bend the tabs over, whatever. I mean, it's something that probably isn't supposed to be on a car, but who cares? I mean, it's a piece of metal, and cars are metal, right? So hope you can use that tip. Well, there it is, not completely mounted, but sitting in the hole with the adapter that we made, holding it in place. I think I'm going to wait to permanently mount that until I get this all apart and painted up, because, hey, you know, taking it apart a bunch of times more than necessary, just gonna take the chance of scratching it up and trying to make it look a little good. But I think it looks like it belongs there. If you didn't know that was supposed to be a bezel, you couldn't tell. So I can paint that yellow or black or whatever, or leave it as is. I mean, it's like I said, not show quality. It's not meant to be a shiny part. It's definitely an engineered part, not a styled part. But we can use it for our purposes and get the job done and dare to be different at the same time, right? Hey kids, there's another one in the can. Hope you learned something and you had fun. Definitely got a lot more to do on this old truck. So like, subscribe, share, ring the bell, do that homework, and we'll work on more unique vehicles on the next episode of Smith Motor Works. Later.